Hello, everyone, and welcome to Investing in Small Business Jobs Quality, a virtual convening. We want to thank you all for being here today, and I'm just going to cover a few housekeeping notes to keep in mind. So just so you know, this webinar will be recorded, and we'll also include it in a follow-up email so that you can access it at any time within a week. All webinars attendees are muted to ensure sound quality. We will have a few times in the show where you can ask some questions. So please use the questions box on your control panel to submit those questions so we can get those to our panelists and serve you as best as possible. And as always, if you're experiencing any technical issues, please email goToMeeting@prosperitynow.org. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to Gary Cunningham, our President and CEO here at Prosperity Now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And we are so glad that all of you are here to see us today for this important webinar on the issue of investing in small business job quality, and specifically around this issue of entrepreneurs of color. I want to thank, first off, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as the funders and co-hosts of this event today. I think all of us know that this issue of worker quality, of the future of work, is so critical and important for what's going on today in our society with COVID, with the great resignations, with all of these issues. We wanted to find out if, in fact, entrepreneurs of color, what is the conditions and the quality of their workforce, and how did their workforce feel about their work? And so we went about doing an investigation of that. I'm so proud of this work and the staff that worked on it for Prosperity Now. But let me also thank the members of the expanded Black Business Credit Initiative, the CDFIs that participated in the expanding Black Business Credit Initiative. Really is focused on how do we change the access to capital, access to technical assistance, and access to markets for entrepreneurs of color. And these, there were 7 organizations that are CDFIs, 4 of which participated in this study. They are MEDA, Community First, City First Enterprises, and the Black Business Investment Fund. These organizations actually use their time, energy, and talents to actually survey their clients to determine what is the quality of work, and that's why we're here today. I think most of us know that small businesses supply over half of the employees in this country, meaning they are producing the jobs, and that micro businesses supply over 30 million jobs in America. Many of these small businesses employ local workers, fuel economic opportunity, fuel job creation, which is really the backbone of all of our communities. So if we can actually address these issues, we can actually change the dynamics within communities of color. And the vision here, the real vision here is to build a sustainable wealth that makes an economy that works for everyone. I think another part of that vision is also access to the one thing that you can't be in a capitalist country and not get capital to run your business. And that's what's happening for many BIPOC communities. These small businesses are not able to get the capital that they need to survive. So our vision at Prosperity Now is that we really are recentering our work around this issue of economic justice so everybody can participate in all of our financial structures and institutions. And then finally, CDFIs are uniquely positioned. And when I say CDFIs, I mean community development financial institutions, which are mission-driven lenders, are uniquely positioned to support building quality jobs, in Black and brown small businesses throughout this country. And this is important because they have a multiplier effect. Economic well-being of these entrepreneurs actually feeds the community, et cetera. And besides all of that, it is critical that we support these mission-driven lenders, because so often in communities of color and BIPOC communities, people are taken advantage of by predatory lenders, hackers, et cetera. And so this work of looking at what is the quality of the job is critical for us moving forward as a community, as a country. So with that, I want to make sure that I turn it over to Ebony White, who is our Director of Racial Wealth Initiatives at Prosperity Now. Ebony?
Yes, thank you, Gary, so much for that. So my name is Ebony White, Director of the Racial Economic Justice Team here at Prosperity Now. And I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy days to join us for this challenging but so important conversation. What does job quality for Black and Latinx small business owners look like? And how can CDFIs and other stakeholders support an ecosystem that contributes to these ideas? We will share some findings from a recent research from employees of small business owners, discuss some of the challenges, the limitations, and the opportunities for entrepreneurs and business owners from all stakeholders to really see how is it that we can come together and support small business owners as they're trying to provide job quality for their employees. And so Prosperity Now, we embarked on this work through the generous support and partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as Gary mentioned. And it was really to strengthen the ecosystem of support for entrepreneurs of color. And with the support over the past year, we were able to provide technical assistance and peer learning support to 4 organizations that were members of the Expanding Black Business Credit Initiative. And as Gary mentioned, those organizations were the City First Enterprises, the Black Business Investment Fund, Community First Fund, and MEDA. And we are so thankful to our partners for supporting the development of the Investing in Job Quality Research Report that we are excited to be releasing with all of you today. This report will really help ground the conversations that we are looking forward to having with all of you today. And they were also pivotal in the process as we really they help us to build out the report by engaging in interviews, focus groups, and they also provided us access to their small business owners and their respective employees. And so when I say this report, this convening, it was all a partnership and we could not have done it without them. So we are truly thankful to your leadership and your partnership in this process. So today, what we have for you today is that we will be sharing some of the findings and some key themes that comes out of the report that's around exploring job quality for Latinx and Black-owned small businesses, We will follow that with a panel discussion on the key themes and findings from the report, really trying to think, how does that really compare to the lived experiences of CDFIs, of business owners, of their employees, as well as other key actors that are very deep in this space of how to think about job quality in the essence of small businesses. And then we're also going to look at some real-time solutions where we're really excited to be able to share with you a case model that Pacific Community Ventures will be sharing with the group today. And then we're going to also have a fire chat. And the fire chat will really focus on the role that CDFIs can play. Prosperity Now, we have a unique position when it comes to small businesses because our support is by way of CDFIs. And so, of course, we have to really think about how is it our touch points, the CDFIs that we work so closely with, how is it that we can really help them to think more creative and more innovative around how they can really provide support, knowing that they are already providing technical assistance and other resources to their small business owners. And so this is a very important conversation where it's going to be a CDFI and a small business owner who are partnering with each other right now. And so they'll be able to share with us some of their experiences. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. The first thing that we're going to be doing is speaking with Laura Yepes, who is the program manager at the Ecosystems Change team here at Prosperity Now, and also Megan Klein-Hattery. And I apologize if I said your name correctly, but she's also a research consultant that's been working really closely with us on this report. They're going to share some of the findings of this report, and we're really going to talk about what are some of those job quality indicators. And you will find that there's a lot of different ideas and meanings when it comes to what are indicators that we really should be prioritizing as we're thinking about job quality. And so with that, I am going to pass it over to Megan and Lauda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony. And thank you, Gary, for the introduction. I'm so excited to share this work with you all today and to have you hear not just from our research team, which today includes my colleague Laura and I, but also from the partners in the cohort who made it possible for us to bring you all of this information. I'm happy to answer questions that you all put in the chat, and we'll have time for reflection on what all of this actually means throughout the convening. Next slide, please. So our objectives today were to assess job quality in Latinx and Black-owned small businesses. We looked at businesses that had 20 or fewer employees, and the ultimate goal here was to identify ways that CDFI can support Latinx and Black-owned business owners in building quality jobs. Next slide, please. So a quick preview of our findings as a bit of a hook before I get into the details of what we did and the nuances in the research. In the online survey, the online employee survey, we had a box where employees could tell us whatever they hadn't been able to tell us during the survey. And it gives them the opportunity to tell us what they think is important for us to understand. And this quote here, and the quote was in caps as entered, represents the type of comments left. It's amazing working in a company owned by Black people. And in fact, 44% said that working for a Black and Latinx owned business was extremely important, and 23% said it was very important. Next slide, please. So just a quick outline of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to go over the 13 elements of job quality that we looked at, explain our mixed methods design, walk us through some of the findings, and then Laura will lead us through the audience questions and transition us to the panel discussion of the work. Next slide, please. We started our work with a literature review to understand what past research has found about job quality in small businesses and what's known about small businesses owned by Black and Latinx entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. So the literature was pretty clear that for most workers, wages are the most important factor in how they see the quality of a job. Based on our review of the literature, there were 6 essential items for job quality, and those include quality wages, stable and predictable scheduling, paid time off, a safe workplace, quality work environment, and worker voice. Next slide, please. So while those elements are necessary for quality jobs, they're not sufficient. Quality jobs have to offer the opportunity for sufficient job fit. And depending on an employee's preference, other characteristics can turn what would be an okay job into a good job. Recent research by others on job quality in small and micro businesses finds this. Job satisfaction can be high despite lower wages because other elements of the job fit an employee's needs and preferences. So as employee preferences differ, what makes a job a quality job is going to differ for each person. And employers need to offer some combination of the following to have the potential for the jobs that they're offering to have good job fit and become a quality job. So this includes retirement benefits, health insurance, wealth building opportunities, investing in employees, career advancement and promotion, a positive social environment, and work-friendly policies. Next slide, please. Now we looked at all of those elements of job quality for the full report, but for today we're going to focus on the following: quality wages, stable and predictable scheduling, quality work environment, worker voice, and health insurance. Next slide, please. So for our methods, next slide. We used a mixed methods design where we built on the strength of qualitative and quantitative research. We started with in-depth interviews. We did interviews with representatives from the 4 partner CDFIs. We then moved on and did 2 focus groups, and we had 4 individual interviews with entrepreneurs for a total of 10 interviews. All of the interviews were transcribed and coded for emerging themes, and we anonymized the interviews to protect our participants. Our partner CDFIs helped us with the recruitment for the interviews with the entrepreneurs and the employee survey. Having to do all of this virtually and not being able to show up and administer the survey in person really made it harder to hit the numbers that we had initially targeted for both the qualitative and the quantitative arms in the study. For our quantitative survey, we recruited all employees from eligible businesses, and it looks like the biggest hurdle for getting for recruitment was getting the employers to share the survey with their employees. Ultimately, of the businesses that had any respondents, we hit a 53% response rate. We had 113 employees respond to our survey. 82 were regular direct employees, and 31 were employees who were placed by temp agencies that were funded by the CDFIs. The quantitative data were analyzed in Stata, and as we walk through our analysis, it's important to remember that we didn't have direct access to employees, so we're relying on employers sending the survey out. So that means that employers who are more detail-oriented and employers who value job quality are probably more likely to send along the survey to their employees. We also have small numbers, so we're going to be cautious in our interpretations. And also our focus of employers with 20 or fewer employees means that we have a subset of small businesses where the entrepreneur really knows and is likely to have had close interactions with their employees. Next slide, please. So as you can see from this table, many of the businesses represented are professional services. It's important to remember that a number of different businesses are underrepresented. So restaurants, construction, barbershops, auto repair, cleaning services. These are all jobs where people are less likely to work behind a computer for their work, and they're underrepresented in our study. Next slide, please. Everything that we present will be stratified with regular employees in the first column and the temp agency employees in the second column. For the sake of time, I'm going to focus on the regular employees. Very briefly, these are some of the demographic characteristics we had for our respondents. Most were aged 25 to 44. Next slide, please. We see substantial racial diversity among the employees. We also have 15% who identified as Hispanic, and about 60% of regular employees identified their sex as female. Next slide, please. We had a good range of household structure and income. Next slide. And consistent with having a sample that largely, can you go back up one? Thank you. Consistent with having a sample that largely comes from professional services, just over half of the employees in the sample have a bachelor's degree or graduate degree. 1 in 5 was related to the business owner, and most were full-time employees. Next slide. Before we get into what the entrepreneurs and employees said, here are a few things that the CDFIs shared with us during our interviews. Next slide. And again, we've kept all of this anonymous. We see 2 approaches. Some think of it as growing their businesses into higher quality jobs, while others see it as increasing representation in high quality jobs. So the first example here is, but as they grow in scale, the quality of the job and the fit of the type of people they bring in becomes really, really important for their ability to really actually grow a business. And then the other approach is, to me, it's a job that's going to, offer some scalability, that is going to offer you some opportunities that you're going to be happy, to work there. And by virtue of what we're doing, concentrating on those businesses that have scalability, most of those businesses are going to be good jobs. Next slide, please. Important to consider in this context of these interviews is how Black and Latinx entrepreneurs are pushing back against systemic racism in the labor force. We often heard refrains, as the one you see here, from entrepreneurs, where they give examples of how they want to impact their communities through their small businesses. They understood the unique place they had in their community to be able to offer opportunities to underinvested groups, such as those who have been previously incarcerated. Some entrepreneurs mentioned how this population are offered limited employment opportunities and how they hope to lessen that by providing not just employment, but also guidance and mentorship. Next slide, please. So now we're going to dive into the findings for each of the job quality elements. The first element is quality wages. The business owners describe wanting to pay quality wages. Entrepreneurs each had their own way of determining what a quality wage meant for them. Some considered it offering more than the minimum wage in their state, while others assessed what workers in their industry were earning locally. And here we have the entrepreneur saying, I'm not going to be the one who pays a minimum wage. That's not me. I'm going to pay a living wage. Next slide, please. Now, this is how employees answered the questions about their pay in the employee survey. Low wage was defined as 2/3 or less of the national median earnings, which is $13.33. Decent wage is 2/3 of the national mean earnings or more, which is $17.50. 72% of employees said that they were satisfied with their pay. 31% are in low wage jobs, and another 44% are in decent wage jobs. However, 42% that they have indicated that they've engaged in an additional job or gig in the past month. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at scheduling, and scheduling takes into account how much advance notice employees have for their schedule, which allows them to arrange other parts of their lives and care for any dependents. And when we consider scheduling, we also included flexibility for employees, like the ability to work a schedule that's different from the company norm. In our interviews, entrepreneurs talked about their transition to remote during the pandemic, and some described an initial hesitation with flexible time and remote work, but are now embracing it as they see employee productivity has remained constant, and as we see here. This entrepreneur says, but it was the COVID that really changed my mind about flexible time. And that was something we heard a couple times over. Next slide, please. And, oh, sorry, next slide. Yes. I apologize. Go up one slide. I think it skipped two. Down. So it should be one after that. I'm not sure why that slide's not showing up, but I can talk us through what was on the employee side of it. 79% of employees offered flexible scheduling, but 27% of employees were given 1 week or less notice, advance notice of their schedule. 89% reported being satisfied or very satisfied with the times that they work, and another 87% said that the control over the days and times that they worked was important. One challenge that we saw is about 1/3 of employees said that their hours varied too much to say what their weekly hours are. Okay, so now I'm going to come to worker voice. The next essential element is worker voice. Worker voice is when employees are encouraged to have an opportunity to express concerns or ideas for improvements at work. The entrepreneurs described how they aimed to empower their employees through different strategies like surveys or even just through conversations. One example you see here, an entrepreneur made use of what they called micro meetings to check in with employees. And here this entrepreneur is explaining, as a CEO, I check in with multiple people, which once you get the attention of top management, it makes them feel really empowered. I listen to them. Next slide, please. So research on worker voice is focused on the difference between how much say workers say that they have and how much say they believe they should have on a variety of job elements. And the difference between these two, so the amount of say they think they should have but do not, is the voice gap. Our sample of employees reported substantially less voice gap in job quality elements such as pay, benefits, and autonomy compared to employees in a nationally representative sample. A large percent of employees also reported that they have previously spoken about a concern and used their voice. Next slide, please. Our final element is health insurance. Unfortunately, small businesses have a limited capacity, often due to budgeting constraints, to offer health insurance to employees. However, some entrepreneurs still feel responsible for this. And while they may not be able to offer it themselves, they provide employees with the resources on how to access health benefits through other means, such as through the local healthcare programs. And as this entrepreneur explained, I don't just say, oh yeah, I don't offer it. And so, go figure it out on your own. I will go to the office with them. I will help them fill out the paperwork. or we'll do it online and I'll just walk them through the process. We found that 28% of employees have health insurance directly through work. Another 22% reported that their employer helped them get it, such as in the quote highlighted above. Next slide, please. So a quick summary of what we've highlighted here. 72% of employees are satisfied with their pay, but 31% are in low-wage jobs. Entrepreneurs struggled with offering health insurance, but they were able to help their employees access it elsewhere. They also struggled with sufficient notice for employees that had variable schedules. Employees seemed to be satisfied with worker voice, with pay, with scheduling, work hours, and the ability to work from home. Next slide, please. So to highlight again, this was a pilot study and gives us a peek into what's going on related to job quality in Latinx and Black-owned small businesses. It raises many questions that future research should examine. Future research should involve a larger study that allows us to compare the quality of jobs created by BIPOC entrepreneurs with those created by white entrepreneurs. We also need more research into aspects such as worker voice and power, wealth building, and family-friendly policies. Thank you all for your interest in this work. We are now opening up the chat for reflections and questions. Laura, I'm going to hand this over to you to lead. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Megan, for that and for guiding us through the research and the main findings. We're very happy for you all to be here with us. If you have any questions, please drop them into our questions box. For now, our first question is, how can entrepreneurs be supported as they help employees enroll in health insurance and other social services that they are not able to provide? And was this a common thing? Oh, I think this was for you, Megan.
Hi. It was a common theme. We heard this from a couple of the entrepreneurs, and the fact that 22% of the employees were getting their health insurance that way. It seems like this is happening, and I'm gonna have our panelists discuss this and how they can help that. But definitely connecting entrepreneurs with resources, a list of resources and local services that can help get their employees the health insurance would be a really great step, and take some of that burden off of the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think that's right. Also, we have another question. What was the job satisfaction rate for respondents not in low-wage jobs? Which I don't know if we parsed out completely, now that I think about it.
We did not. Yeah, we haven't had a chance to look at it by that. Our numbers were a little low, so we didn't do so much diving into those data. But if you send us an email, I can get you that information.
Yeah, one thing I would like to point out is, I don't know, Olivia, can you go back to the slide where it's full-time versus temp employees? Because that one showed by education level. That's a couple more back, I think. And I think if you notice the education level, so one thing that really struck us was that for temp agencies, they tended to have a high school degree, but for regular employees, we tended to see people having bachelor's and graduate degrees. So that says a really stark comparison between what employers are looking in education and filling in roles versus temporary assignments, right? Like, you're more likely to be in a temp position or something where you have a very unstable scheduling if you have a high school degree. So that was something that was really interesting for us when we were doing our research. We have another question in the chat. Are there options for non-employer firms or employer firms with 1 to 3 employees to get group-based health insurance? I think that's a question that's left up to the CDFIs. Be sure to bring that back up when we have our CDFI friends on the line, because they might have some really good ideas. CDFIs play such a critical role in our communities, not only in building up community wealth and things like that, but also connecting people, right? that's something that's really interesting. If CDFIs can see themselves becoming a place to help these small employers get health insurance for their employees, that's something that would be really beneficial to a lot of people, especially considering our Medicare system and the ACA. Another question from the chat. Did employers identify strategies or incentives used to create quality jobs? Was there an impact on revenues?
They all met, so in the qualitative work with the entrepreneurs, they all talked about wanting to create quality jobs. Some of them talked about different training programs that they put in, and how important that was. They did often also talk about how important it was to be able to get really good employees, and to hold on to them too. And a number of them, said, like, when if I can't provide this for my employees, they're going to go elsewhere. And, I do all of this investing in them, and I'd like to be able to hold on to them. So I think that they saw a connection between being able to provide good jobs and how that ultimately works out for the businesses.
Yeah, I agree. I also think particularly COVID played a really important role in the way that we define job quality, in terms of scheduling and flexible work location, right? A lot of the people that we talked to, they changed their mind during COVID. They said, I didn't like to let my employees work remotely before, but now I realize that if they're doing their work, and most of the time they're doing it much better, then it's okay for them to be remote and for us to continue that way as long as the work gets done. We can talk a little bit more about that too. Another question is, how do you see data like this supporting policy/advocacy efforts that support small business owners and the benefits they have available to them?
I can answer this more at the surface level, but our policy folks will be able to really speak to this. I think that just seeing what's going on the inside of these small businesses and being able to point out, like, these are, people are happy in these jobs. These are jobs that people want. And if we can get to that, help kind of bridge that gap in funding for, small business owners, Black and Latinx small business owners, the possibility of creating these good jobs and jobs that people want to be working in, it really has a lot of everybody benefits. So.
Agreed. I also think something that Megan put in the research part of the recommendations was seeing what the differences between small business owners that are Black and Latinx versus white entrepreneurs, right? It was really interesting for us to only talk with small businesses led by Latinx and Black people because they're so rooted in community, and it was very apparent in all of the way that they talked about their work, the way they talked about their employees. Most of the time, their employees were from the community itself. There was very little time when they didn't talk about something that their employee was doing to help the community. They would be like, oh, my ex-employee, they make sure to do all this community work on the side. Or another initiative that I try to take into account is volunteer days, where our employees can go and volunteer their time, and we pay for that. So it was really interesting. Another group I remember was a community health, a mental health group, and they even paid for extra training so that they could have trauma-informed response, community and cultural response, so that they would be able to have employees that were culturally aware of the community that they were in. So that was really unique, I think, to these groups and to the work that we did. Megan, I don't know if you want to speak more on that.
Yeah, and I think that it would be hard to overstate in a couple of the focus groups the issue of incarceration and employment after incarceration, and how problematic that is in communities, and their recognition that that really does not mean that you are not going to be a wonderful employee, and the ways that they saw themselves in bringing these folks in and training them and mentoring them and just helping remove some of the barriers that they as entrepreneurs have felt that others have removed for them. There was a lot of agreement on that in focus groups. So I think that those things are really important to also think about.
I also think in terms of benefits, that's something that employees were looking at. Not just like, do you offer health insurance and stuff like that, but what other benefits can they get? Can they get training? Can they get increase in education? Because now that we're in these like 21st century jobs, most of the time there are things that we want beyond just a steady paycheck. We want to be able to grow and learn in our jobs and move up. So I think that's something else that we saw, that a lot of people were like, yeah, I want to invest in my employees. I want the best for them. So I want them to continue doing good work. And so I'm going to invest in their training, in their education, and giving them opportunities to learn more about how I do my job as a CEO. So that was really interesting to hear too.
Yeah, and they also really, there's a lot of appreciation because the small business owners were the entrepreneurs themselves. They really appreciated any entrepreneurial spirit in their employees and encouraged that. So, you know, if there was something inside of an office, some technical stuff in the office that they were using for this arena, but then their employee was interested in it in a different, you know, domain, they were like, okay, of course you can use these resources. Like, you should definitely go forward with this other thing you're also interested in. Like, I'm happy to help you, you know, with software or whatever that is, because we already have it. So like, that was really, really interesting to watch.
Another question is, other than remote work, what are employees looking for when you say schedule flexibility?
So we didn't capture this on the employee survey, but I can say what some of the entrepreneurs described. A lot of them, it's the flexibility with their families. So to be able to be there for you know, Little League, and to go into the schools when their kids are in the schools. So kind of that flexibility of, you know, you're going to get your work done. You know, maybe it's after the kids go to bed, but to be able to be there and to be the type of parent that, you know, the entrepreneurs were glad to have been able to be themselves, because they could, you know, sometimes, you know, pause work and then get it done later. And for them to be able to provide that to their employees, a lot of them commented on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think another thing too was like in advance scheduling. I think it was very apparent that people who were in low wage jobs were less likely to have advanced set scheduling ahead of time, whereas people who were in more jobs of higher quality and higher pay were more likely to have very set schedules, or even anticipated schedules, right? Sometimes, yeah, schedules would change every week, but they would get it on time, right? And so that's a very high, like a key difference in quality jobs when you're thinking about working around childcare, working around adult care. Sometimes you're taking care of other people in your family, and you need to know how to schedule your week or what your time looks like. And so that's another factor that we saw go heavily into what schedule flexibility also looks like.
Yeah. And the research,
Oh yeah, go ahead, Megan.
Points that scheduling flexibility and knowing in advance, it's not impacting just the like that point employee. It ripples through the family in terms of like how else other workers in the family have to figure out and rearrange things. So it's not just impacting the one person, it's impacting entire families.
So another question is, was there any one employer who we spoke to that stood out in providing quality jobs across the multiple indicators that we've talked about, and what did their work look like?
So that's a good question. We didn't look at it we didn't look at the employee data by employer. It was really just to get an overall view of that. An overall view of how employers or employees in general saw their jobs. What I can say is that from the employers that we spoke with, it's really impressive. You know, everything from training was something that many of them, we spent a good amount of time with them talking about, like the training and the mentorship, you know, and that really going from like restaurants and catering businesses, like how they train their employees, how they train them as, you know, servers, how they train them as you know, to prepare food. They're like, and you know, like they're passionate about food. Through training, as the example you gave, Lara, of you know, mental health care providers. We saw just a lot of emphasis on training and how important that was, not only for the business, but for them. They wanted to see their employees grow, and that was something that was really a common theme.
I agree, and I feel like that's the one that really resonated with us a lot. Just seeing their investment in people, their investment in their community. I think that was one of the best things that we learned from the research. And I would encourage you all to at least look at the executive summary. I dropped a link in the chat. Please feel free to look at our main findings. If you really want to read the report, please, because we worked really hard on it. Megan, myself, and our colleague Yvonne, former Prosperity Now member. Thank you, Megan, again for coming here and like sharing all this research with us. You did a phenomenal job with the research, with presenting it. It's a lot of stuff that we went into. We did both qualitative and quantitative interviews and surveys. So a lot of good work went into this project, and we hope that you all learned from something from this. So for now, we will go into transitioning into a panel discussion on how the report findings compare with the experiences of professionals across the CDFI, employees, small business owners, and advocacy actors. Our moderator for this discussion is Jeffrey Shepard of City First Enterprises, and I'll hand it over to Jeffrey. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
All right, can everyone see me and hear me?
We see you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Megan and Laura, for that great presentation on your research. Again, my name is Jeffrey Shepard. I'm a loan officer and green energy initiatives manager at City First Enterprises, which is a nonprofit loan fund and CDFI headquartered in DC, although we lend throughout the DMV region and Baltimore. And we do commercial real estate, affordable housing, small business, green energy loans. And we were lucky enough to be a part of the CDFI cohort that Prosperity Now put together around this time last year. Was able to learn a lot through that cohort, learn a lot from Ebony and her team, and was able to contribute to this fantastic research that Megan and Laura put together. So I'm very grateful for that. We also have Jose and Marie as part of this panel. So I am going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves, starting with Marie. She's still here.
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me, Jeff?
I can.
And you can hear me. Okay, well, thank you for the invitation to be a part of this really rich discussion. And I also want to begin by saying to Gary Cunningham and his great team at Prosperity Now, what an important set of topics, and the timeliness couldn't be more urgent, and just a pleasure to be with you all. Of course, Jeff, I know of your excellent work at City First Enterprises. I'm one of your cousins over at the City First Broadway Bank, and we're proud of the work that the City First family of companies does to make more equitable communities around the country. I have been around a long time, so I've done a few different things. I'm retired from telecommunications. I retired as president and CEO of Verizon Washington about 10 years ago now. I started a small business that I continue to run today. We're a policy consulting shop, particularly focused on regulated industries. And I also had the privilege of serving 4 years in the federal service in President Obama's first term as the Deputy Administrator of the Small Business Administration. So I point out those pieces of my background to say that the lens that I'll have on this conversation is that of someone who has been in a large company environment and has worked with small businesses, my time at the SBA, and a small business owner myself. And again, thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Marie, and I'll turn it over to Jose now. And Jose might be having some technical difficulties.
I think he is. Jeffrey, go to Marie, please. Not Marie, but Jeffrey, Jose, if you want to go ahead and start.
Ebony, I couldn't quite understood what you said, but I'm going to go ahead and
go ahead and get started. Jose is having some issues. Thank you.
That's absolutely fine. All right, Marie, you're in the spotlight. Can you just share a little bit more about your work as Deputy Administrator at the SBA and how job quality sort of played into that role and how you thought about it during that time?
All right, thank you. I was being controlled elsewhere, so I'm unmuted now, I hope. Being at the SBA was a fascinating experience. I've always had an interest in the small business sector, and particularly an interest in engaging with and helping to expand the small business sector for minorities. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, particularly my paternal grandfather, who built a small grass cutting business into a significantly large landscaping company that in the 1950s and 60s in Indianapolis, Indiana, which was still largely segregated, he was able to compete for and win state government contracts. He was bonded, and in those times, that was a major coup for a moderate Black-owned business that had started organically. And I saw in my family's history how my grandfather's business really made the difference for our family. It truly set us on the path to the middle class and allowed for generations from my grandfather to have an opportunity for education and to continue the upward trajectory. So I'm deeply grateful to him for his courage in getting that business started, and have wanted to have that as a part of my work ever since. So at the SBA, if you recall, when President Obama took office, we were in just the horrible grip of the Great Recession. The economy was really having a very tough time, and the most egregious impact from the recession fell heavily on Black and brown communities, because so much of the economic loss was due to the shady mortgage practices of some financial institutions that caused people to lose their homes, and therefore lose, for Black and brown communities, the major engine of wealth building and economic opportunity, and that's their homes. So at the agency, we got very focused on, all right, what can we do as quickly as possible to help bring some tools to the minority business community, so that at least the companies that were still going, who were surviving the perilous economic times, how could we give them a bit of a jump start? In 2010, the most significant piece of legislation to support small businesses, the Small Business Act of 2010, was passed, and there were over 80 tools within that piece of legislation, most of which fell to the SBA to implement. That
to the webinar. You have
part of that
an
story.
attendee in listen-only mode.
Hello? 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 Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, this is Jose. For some reason, the link that I had was attendee only, so I couldn't unmute myself. But I don't know if you guys can hear me now.
We can. So glad to have you here, Jose. I'm going to go ahead and let Marie finish up, and then I'll let you more fully introduce yourself.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Back to you, Marie. Okay, it looks like Marie is now experiencing some technical difficulties. So Jose, I might go ahead and let you introduce yourself now.
I think
my
I'm back
name is,
on now. I'm sorry. The system was muting me. Jose, I'm very sorry. I'll just stop by saying and turn the mic, so to speak, over to you, is that there were a number of tools that were implemented at the SBA at that time. And then later in our discussion, I'll be happy to talk about a few of them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marie. All right, Jose, it's all you.
yes, my name is Jose Torimaina. I'm a Hispanic small business owner, owner of a language service company doing interpreting and translation. We've been around since 2013 and started in Minnesota and are kind of going national now, going into multiple states. We're very excited to be a part of this, and I was listening to the panel earlier, but I was unable to unmute myself, and I'm calling over the phone, so you won't see my image there on the video.
That's okay. We'll make sure to send around your headshot after the panel so everyone can know what you look like. Marie, I'll let you go ahead and discuss more about the tools that you were going to discuss.
Okay. I'm sorry. The muting business is a little complicated. One example of tools that came from that omnibus legislation was to create a mentor-protege opportunity for all of the focused programs that SBA operates that are devoted to business development. So I'm sure most people listening are familiar with the 8A program. 8A program has been around for a number of years, and it has always had a mentor-protege component in that businesses that are in the 8A program can mentor other smaller businesses, and businesses who have been mentored as part of the 8A program, once they are further along in their stage of maturity, can also begin to mentor. So the legislation allowed for mentor-protege elements to be factored into the hub zone programs and some of the other contracting areas that the SBA supports. So in essence, the approach was taken to how can we put more tools in the hands of small companies so that they can really begin to use those for their benefit. I talk a lot about, when I was at the agency, a lot about a company that's located in Washington, D.C. They just built a new headquarters in Southeast D.C. in historic Anacostia. Enlightened is the company's name. And to me, they are the poster child of how the proper use of these programs really can make a difference. Enlightened started as a very small two-person shop, two gentlemen who met each other at George Washington University, both DC natives. They started a technology services firm. They've now grown to include cybersecurity as part of their capabilities. But they were a protege firm. They were an 8A graduate. They have been a mentor firm. They participated in the Department of Defense business development programs. They have taken advantage of just about every tool that the SBA and other parts of government have to offer, and it has worked for them. And so what I found at the agency was that business owners of color seem to be more reluctant to approach the agency and to learn what tools they could take advantage of. And so I also made it my business to launch a number of outreach initiatives to try to touch more of those businesses to get them in the circle, so to speak. So that work needs to continue. And I would urge those listening who have not checked out SBA's resources to give them another look.
That's great. Thank you, Marie. When I think about, what you just said, when I think about the research, when I think about sort of the role that CFE and my fellow participants have, both in the cohort, but their broader mission, I think it's about thinking more broadly about the resources that are available to small businesses across the country and how to connect them to those resources. Now, I'm a little biased in that I think CDFIs are a very important link in that chain, and I can speak briefly about that as well. People often who are not familiar with CDFIs wonder what the value add is. And when I try to explain it to them, it's not necessarily that we offer, super great interest rates, terms that can beat out the most, conventional biggest lenders. But it's about our flexibility, and it's about how we look at the whole borrower, at the business and the business credit, not the individual or the entrepreneur's credit. Oftentimes we get folks that apply for a loan with us, and their books might be messy. We can tell by looking at their financial statements that their payroll taxes are off. Often they're paying more than they need to. They don't necessarily, or they might not necessarily have a background in bookkeeping and accounting, although they're very competent at running their business. So they might not necessarily know how to put together projections or a business plan or anything like that. And I think that's where CDFIs really come in, and they provide that flexibility that a conventional lender may not. And we also work with our borrowers to figure out what the best situation could be for their employees and how we might help. One of the difficult things about that for CDFIs is that it takes a lot of reporting to sort of understand that. One of the things that I heard in our cohort that Prosperity Now sponsored was that that's something that CDFIs across the board suffer, or not suffer, but struggle with, is sort of towing the line between reporting that gives CDFIs quality data with which they can make decisions, but not being too onerous on the small business owner, right? And figuring out how to collect that data and then be able to send that data to researchers like Prosperity Now that can take that and turn it into solid action items. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jose and just ask him to talk a little bit about his experience as an entrepreneur, as a founder, and his company, Mint. So I'll go ahead and turn it over now, Jose.
Yeah, thank you. I first wanted to comment on some of the what was said with respect to SBA and the CDFIs. And I found as a small business owner that it is a little bit onerous and difficult to be able to reach and understand a lot of these, as a small business, some of these criteria or some of these people. It's not like the SBA or CDFIs don't want to help us. It's just a little bit out of understanding and reach as we're growing and being entrepreneurs and being pulled here and being pulled there, because we're small enough that we can't dedicate, all our resource and time in doing this. Very competent people being spread out in many, many ways. And as an example, I'm in a small entrepreneur group right now, and while we're doing some leadership training, one of our African American entrepreneurs is out there with his video while distributing his merchandise, doing this. And, so that's the reality sometimes of some of the people that are some of the small business entrepreneurs that are minorities. And what I found super helpful in actually bridging that gap, and I don't know if this is helpful to say or not, but is in some of the nonprofit organizations that actually focus on doing this bridging. I was fortunate enough in my case to be paired up with MEDA or Hands-on Twin Cities or PCV that have allowed some volunteerism and some mentorship and ongoing over time. That's made a humongous difference. I still have not been able to understand a lot of the bigger concepts and get into that space, but I'm a lot closer than I was.
That's great, Jose. And can you talk a little bit more about your relationship with MEDA, who is a CDFI, I believe, located in Minnesota? Your relationship with them, they were a fellow part of my cohort, so I'm especially interested to hear about this.
Yeah, they've been a phenomenal help. So they have had a business consultant to help has met with me over the last 2-3 years, weekly or once every other week, and has basically helped in every single area that I have requested. Importantly, has connected me with with a lot of other resources like PCV and Hands-on Twin Cities. And so, for example, MEDA, so the business consultant realized the needs that we had and had us get a pro bono 3 or 4 month project with Target Corporation. And we had 5 executives help us out with some human resource and marketing questions and difficulties we were having. And we got this amazing help, things that we would not be able to afford. And it's made a humongous impact. And we'll have it for months and probably years to come because they provide all this extra resource and knowledge that we can't afford. And it makes a substantial impact because I hire about 500 BIPOC population, a minority independent contractors or employees, and every single one of them is impacted by this sort of work, this sort of help.
That's great. And I heard you mention PCV, so they will be a presenter in the next segment of today's convening. So definitely stick around for that. I know I'm looking forward to it. Jose, I've got one more question for you. Then I promise, Marie, I'm getting back to you. One of the more common themes in the research presented today was that the top biggest things that are difficult for small business owners to provide for their employees are wages and health insurance. And Jose, I was hoping, for those of us that are attending this webinar that have not run their own small business or done anything like that, I think we intuitively understand that health insurance could be a difficult thing for small business owners to provide. But can you sort of walk us through what that actually looks like at your level?
Yeah, so we have at this right now employees that I tried really hard to find health insurance for them. So first of all, the people that we've hired self-select. So to be able to go to a small business, the people that look at the job posting and stuff typically either have a spouse that has it or has some other way of getting health insurance. So they start self-selecting. Over time, we realized that we're getting bigger and we wanted to provide health insurance. And when first of all, it was difficult to know who to contact because we're small enough that not a lot of kind of agencies specialize or as interested because it's not like thousands of people that are joining health insurance, so the incentive is lower. The costs are super high. And very importantly is even the health insurance I was trying to find, the deductibles are so high and we pay as much as we can our employees. But if you have an $8,000, $9,000 deductible or $12,000 deductible after you putting a huge effort in giving them health insurance, even if you could do that, then how can the employees use that insurance for their regular health care? So I found myself in a position that if I got like what I might be able to afford, it was basically, I thought it was just kind of throwing the money away because they wouldn't have been able to use that health insurance as much as if they got it through some other fund or some other way. And then once I was able to find people to contact to be able to even talk to me to try to see, well, we have maybe, a few people that need this health insurance, we didn't meet their quotas. And, what does that mean? For example, you need to have at least 50% of people that qualify to do that. Well, because they had self-selected, and this is why I mentioned it before, many people were already either got insurance through some other means, through some other like through the state, there's through here and there, and that made us not be able to meet the numbers of the requirements by health insurance providers to be able to get them health insurance. So we were almost qualified out, and that drove, of course, our premium even higher because there were less of us doing that. So in all, it's just been very difficult. And just adding one more thing, and then I'll hand it over, is as we're really starting, and it's very difficult to know how to get help to be able to know how to get that help to get the health insurance. So we're a step back, and so it's when you start off again doing a million things, running around, having to do, look at HR, marketing, sales, do all these things. And additionally, you want to add this health insurance component, and there's very little help. It just becomes a daunting task and extremely difficult to do.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate you providing that context, and we'll get back to you in a second. Maria, I wanted to throw it to you right now, and Jose's last comment was actually an excellent transition. He said, I don't necessarily know how to even get started with these types of things. What would you recommend through your experience for small businesses? What kind of partners can they go out and seek to help them
Sure.
get started?
First of all, I couldn't agree with Jose more. As I mentioned during my brief introduction, I run my own small business, and when you're chief marketing officer, chief administrative officer, chief compliance officer, and actually having to produce product, deliverables too, it is a lot. Small business owners are some of the hardest working, most creative people that you will find. I'm a huge believer in partnerships, and back to another one of Jose's excellent points, the organizations that he found in Minnesota to help serve, as he termed it, that bridge between his company and his vision and the resources, the array of resources that are out there, that becomes critical, because you can't build the business and then do all the research that's necessary to try to run to ground every aspect of the business that you need. My time working for President Obama was my first experience in the federal government, and so I didn't come into that role as a government person. I'm a private sector person, and so it was daunting. There's no way I would argue that the federal government does a lot of amazing work, but it is a system. It is a complex entity that can be daunting. What I have found is that entities like the CDFI community, and I'm also a big proponent of chambers of commerce, and I want to talk a little bit about the DC Chamber and some of the programs that they offer that I think are well worth the price of membership to take advantage. So, for example, insurance. Washington, D.C. may be, well, we're unique in a number of ways, but we have a public health insurance system that's referred to as DC Link. But a small business member of the chamber can have access to individuals who will serve as navigators for that business owner to determine how to actually get his or her employees connected to this insurance program, and can also help them to look at other insurance options if that makes more sense for their particular business. Through the DC Chamber, businesses also were able to get technical assistance related to the PPP loans and to identify banking relationships that would work best for their particular company. The Chamber provides procurement for a number of procurement events to bring large companies together with small companies and to provide the opportunity for the smaller firms to learn more about the procurement structure in large companies and to actually make business connections in that way, the networking on and on. So I'll stop there, but the major point is that chambers, CDFIs, other types of nonprofits, the Urban League, I know does a great deal with providing supports for small business. It's important for small business owners to at least carve out some time to do some research to see what the ecosystem is around small business supports in your particular area. Of course, there are the big players, the SBA and other government, local and state government also have resources, the CDFI community, others. But find out where those resources are, because that can be a huge advantage to be able to have that partner, that entity to help, again, pave the way to where some of the most important pieces of information, resources, assets that the small business can take advantage of.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. We often try at CFE, we get tons of people that come to us and they're not necessarily in the right stage where CFE can provide a loan to them, but that doesn't mean that we stop responding to them, that we kick them out the door, right? We like to see ourselves as, a crucial part of the system that is able to connect them to those other resources. That's a lot of what I've tried to catch up on since moving to the DC region almost 2 years ago exactly, is what are the different resources that I can connect these businesses to when CFE isn't necessarily the best fit for them at that time. And I always hope that they're going to come back to us. So you're pointing me in a few more interesting directions that I can follow up on. Jose, I want to turn back to you. One of the important themes that I found throughout this research was that, yes, these small businesses can't always offer the highest wages. They may not often be able to provide health insurance. But these entrepreneurs try to find other ways to improve the quality of their employees' jobs. So I was just interested in hearing from you, what are the other ways that you look to improve your employees' job quality that may not necessarily be financial?
Yeah, that's a great question. We, small business entrepreneurs, especially being kind of minority-owned, cannot compete with like corporate in that area of the finance, but we can certainly compete and I think beat corporate America in what I would call my company values. To start, we started from the beginning. This is before COVID. This is 2013. Having everyone work from home. So I provide everyone with an office at home. We create micro meetings. I meet with every single employee maybe once a month, some of them once every 2 months, but they get a meeting, a very short meeting with and leads much more with the CEO and with their leads, with their supervisors at a regular basis. So they're part of the system, they're part of the movement, they're part of the decision-making process, not making decisions themselves, but providing input and feedback. And these days, people don't want to be drones. They really want to grow, as Mary was saying, as develop. And so we provide professional development for them. We focus a lot on how can we get you promoted. And in a bigger business, might take years to go from one place to the next. In a small business that's growing at a great rate like we are, you can get promoted much, much quicker. And then the last one is what someone asked before about flexible schedules in a previous question. They were absolutely right. In a small business, it's a team thing, and everyone helps. If your kid for some reason called from school and were not feeling well, it's not a question like you won't be given a flexible schedule. Everyone knows. Everyone helps. It's part of the value system. and they just go pick up their kid, come back, and maybe they have to take the day off or maybe an hour. And what's incredible is we give them even more ability to maybe abuse the system by being kind to them, and they do the opposite. These amazing employees will go, no, you guys have helped us out. We see these battles. We want to be part of the team. We're going to contribute and work even harder to make this work.
Yeah. May I underscore, I think what Jose just shared was phenomenal and so powerful. And yet another reason why small businesses are so important, and particularly in Black and Brown communities. It is about feeling as though, having an employee feel as though he or she is part of something that he or she truly has a stake in and is valued and is appreciated, and that is signaled to that person in every way. I think what the pandemic has taught us so many lessons. One of the most important ones, I think, is with the Great Resignation. I mean, the workforce is saying, you know what, you can throw money at me, and yes, we all need money to live, but there are other things that I am going to seek, and I'm going to go to if I can find it, where that allow workspaces that allow me the flexibility, that sense of value, the sense of voice being heard, because that's very important to me also. Because if I don't have to commute, and if I can make some other changes in terms of spending, then those intrinsic values and assets within a workplace become even more important than the money. Not at all to say, I mean, we want Black and Brown businesses to grow so that they can pay whatever wages are the competitive wages. But I do believe that our business owners often have that other sense of how to create family, how to create community that is highly valued for employees. So I just think, Jose, people are lucky to work for you.
Yeah, thank you. And and this is not new. There's some research on this. When I went to school, I read some Good to Great and the social sectors from Jim Collins. He mentions a lot of how to, which is where I got some of this, is how to focus on the non-dollar signs. A lot of people do it because of the craft, do it because of love of themselves and wanting to be better, and want to be part of a team, want to be part of the bigger purpose. And it's not all, of course, we want to pay them as best we can, but it's not only about that.
Yeah, those are great points, Jose and Marie. Jose, I wanted to throw it back to you one more time before we open up questions to the audience. And just want to sort of talk about the nature of your business. So Minnesota Interpreters and Translators. I'm assuming that you have a much more diverse workforce than most small businesses in the country. Can you talk about sort of the opportunities and challenges surrounding that, and how that diversity of your workforce comes up in your day-to-day operations?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. We work with almost every single minority community out here because we provide the language and bridging of communication skills in the most important area. So if you need an interpreter, it's for, you can find yourself maybe speaking broken English for some things, but when you find yourself being in front of an attorney, being in front of a judge, being in front of a doctor, some of those being from a teacher with your kids, things that are extremely important, you need an interpreter. And so every immigrant, every person that's born in this country that somehow didn't learn English well, or their English skills are not as well, and even some kind of people who have hard of hearing, they turn to us to make sure that they can get that equal access. And so we have people from everywhere, for different nations, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and they all contribute to making, I guess, our society and our community better. And some of the challenges that we have, I'll just put it in something I think everyone will understand. Not everyone feels that this is important, or maybe they think that's important. We just had a lot of social movement and people start thinking, well, maybe it is important to think about minorities or some of these things. But then when it comes to reality, they don't act that way. And they don't want to pay, for example, for the services. They try to have someone going to the doctor, like the mom bring their kid, or typically we have had parents that bring their, schools won't provide sometimes interpreters, so it's the child going to a parent-teacher conference, and all of a sudden they're A students because the child is doing a lot of interpreting. So being able to have systems that make sure that they pay for the system. And as the black and white example that I mentioned, I was just talking to someone yesterday that they wanted to pay $12.50 to have an interpreter come in. They said that was the rate that was accepted, and to come in to, for example, see a dentist, interpret for them, and then be done. I mean, who's going to come into your office for $12.50, do a professional job, and spend time with a patient, do everything that we do, which is so important for society, and then be paid something that does not provide livable wage? And let me put this in exchange or in contrast with, if this had been, I believe this is because it's a minority source, people that are lower income, they're in a vulnerable position, so they don't have a voice in the system. When their counterparts, for example, in the a little bit more organized, more white community, which are kind of like the hard of hearing folks that they're typically white in this country, they're paid at least 3 to 4 times more for doing that sort of work. So I think there's a lot of inequity, and I don't know if you have more direct questions about this.
Well, Jose, I could ask you questions for the rest of the afternoon, but our panel is very limited in time, although I'm sure you will get at least one more question before we close out. So we're going to throw it to the audience at this point, and I do see that the first question is in fact for me. Here I was hoping that I would get to speak as little as possible. One of the adages that I try to follow is that you should never be the smartest person in the room, and I have not had to be concerned about that in this panel, that is for sure. But the first question is for me, and it says, what can the CDFI community do to better support business owners looking to build quality jobs? I think that's an excellent question, and I won't pretend to speak to the entire CDFI community. I would say that CDFIs need to either build their own resources or build out such a strong network of different partner organizations that they can connect folks to, depending on their questions, whether it's about health insurance, whether it's about scheduling, payroll, things like that. I know that's something that CFE is working on, both with building out sort of internal technical assistance. I feel like we already have, people that have strong skills on the bookkeeping and accounting side, and we really do work with our borrowers to walk them through that and make sure they have the financial information they need to make strong management decisions. But that's sort of where we're limited at this point. And I think both the points that Marie and Jose made about the different ways that small business owners need to be connected to different partners, that is certainly something that I'm going to look to, and that's what I'm going to recommend to our leadership is building out more of that network. Now I see a second question has come in. This is for both Marie and Jose. And it says, how are your businesses pushing back against racism and historic inequities in the labor market? And Marie, I'll let you handle that softball question first.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm reminded of the old adage, actions speak louder than words. So I'm a Black woman. My team is largely comprised of women of color. Being a small business, I have a business model that is scalable, and so we have a group of other small businesses that we call in depending on the type of work that we do, and those companies are very diverse. So in other words, I walk the talk. I'm also very civically involved in my community, and whenever I have the opportunity to make a case for Black and Brown owned businesses, when I have make a case for the need for policies of inclusion and more equitable access to opportunity, I'm eager to do that. When we had our mayor, who was our chief executive, as analogous to a governor in a state, she created a group of several teams that when the city was preparing to reopen after the shutdown from COVID, and I was asked to co-chair the cohort dealing with small businesses and the reopening protocols that we needed to follow. And so that was a great opportunity, not only to make sure that we had an equitable lens on how that process would work, but also to reach out, since I'm fortunate to be familiar with a lot of the minority business community in our city, to bring many of those business owners in so that we could hear directly from them, what do you need in order to reopen? How can the city best support you, et cetera. So it's through my daily walk and my service, I guess that's how I would net it out, that I feel that it's very important to demonstrate those things that I talk a lot about, show up in the very same way.
Absolutely, excellent points. Jose, you want to tackle that question as well? How is your business pushing back against racism and historic inequities in the labor market?
Well, the first thing that we do is we train our interpreters to make sure that they, it might seem silly, but that they interpret everything that is being said in a way that people have the option of actually responding and advocating for themselves. So a lot of it is sometimes when people are not in a position to be able to stand up for themselves, especially when they can't speak the language well, they're in a vulnerable position. Another thing that we emphasize is we make sure to choose who our partners are and who we work for. So that's the big choice that we have. The people or the entity that wanted to pay us these $12.50, we're not going to work with them, obviously, because that would be accepting that $12.50 for someone that's Black and Brown is acceptable when, if you're not Black and Brown, you're paid 3 or 4 times more. So we need to choose our partnerships and say no to what we feel is unjust, even though I might make a little bit of money, maybe not the people that are working and doing that, and that's not okay. So we have to stand up for our values.
Great.
I agree with everything Jose said. Just wanted to add one quick point, and that is that it's important for small businesses, particularly small businesses of color, to do business with one another as well. My printer is a small minority-owned company.
Absolutely.
We bank with a minority depository institution. So everything helps. Everything makes a difference, and it's important to talk about it too. Talk about, Mr. The company that we use for printing is excellent. You should give him a try. This bank is great. On and on, and that helps to do business where that matches with our values. I just wanted to add that
Yeah.
point as well.
Yeah, I agree with Marie. And the one thing that occurred to me too is I think a lot of people that are in the entrepreneurial side and that have access to some of these things that like CDFI, and we're fortunate, where some of these people that are fortunate to be able to have this additional support can do some volunteer work and do some community building and development. So, for example, I work as a president of a nonprofit organization that helps bridge the education gap for Hispanic kids. And I spent a lot of the little time that I have in trying to give back to the community. And I think a lot of us really, love to give back, and that's an important aspect of this.
Yeah, those were great points. Maria, I have a question for you. As you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, we work for cousin organizations. I think that's the way you put it. I work for City First Enterprises, which is a nonprofit loan fund. And you are on the board of directors of City First Broadway, which is a for-profit CDFI. And this is more just personal curiosity, but I'm curious what drew you to want to join the board of City First Bank, now City First Broadway?
I have a long history with City First Bank. I actually was working, our company was Bell Atlantic at the time, went through a couple of large mergers to become Verizon. But I was, at that point, I was regulatory director for the company. And my boss, our CEO, is a legendary person. Delano Lewis, an amazing man. I had the great privilege to work for. But he was one of the early investors in City First Bank at the very beginning. And so I've known about the bank and watched its progress over the years. And I've always been so proud of City First. I never had any notion that I would be invited to join the board. When I returned to what I call civilian life, after my time in the government, I was approached by our CEO, Brian Argrett, and board chair, Chuck Muckenfuss, to talk about coming onto the board. And I'm not a banker. So banking it's an industry I know about, but certainly was no expert. But I was invited to join the board because of my regulatory background and business experience, and it's just been a blessing to be part of the bank, and particularly to have gone through the merger with Broadway Financial Services to create City First Broadway, which is our new entity. We're bi-coastal. We have made history as the first minority depository institution to have $1 billion or more under management, and I am very excited about what we're poised to do at a time when having a mission-focused, well-run financial institution have the geographic span and the assets at their disposal to really make a difference. We were able to, the ESIP program from Treasury, we were recently able to participate in that, and as a result, it's strengthened our balance sheet even more. So I'm excited about what the coming years are going to bring, certainly as we come out of the, hopefully, prayerfully, are coming out of the pandemic. There is such a need for an institution like City First, but all of what we do, all parts of the minority business community are so important. The financial component, the business owners like Jose, those who provide technical assistance. We're at a time when we all have to come together and just have a focus on providing the opportunity to start more businesses by people of color. Because we know when we have Black and brown businesses, strong businesses, the whole community wins. People are hired, people have their opportunity to build careers, to build wealth, and to give back to build stronger communities. And we need that now more than ever.
Well said. Well, I'd like to thank Marie and Jose for joining me on this panel, and for Prosperity Now for allowing me to facilitate. We're going to go ahead and head into our break time now, and we will return at 2:45 to hear from Casey Bell with Pacific Community Ventures to discuss their Good Jobs, Good Businesses Toolkit. You definitely don't want to miss it. I am excited to stick around and learn more from them. So I'm going to go ahead and head off camera now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
All right, so it is 2:45 and folks should be coming back from break. So welcome back from the break. I do want to give a quick thank you to Jeffrey, Jose, and Marie for that great discussion. I liked how you all spoke so candidly about the limitations and the recommendations on how to create a network of support, the importance of business owners of color supporting each other, as well as how to create a culture that shows the appreciation and value of your employees beyond income. But with that, we're going to move into some real solutions, some real-time solutions. And so I think it's always important to always do your research and to know who's doing it right, like who's getting some promising impact, some best practices that can be scaled. And with that in mind, I want to show you this, just really how CDFIs can support their clients. And so there is a CDFI who is a perfect example, by the way, of how you can go deep and be thoughtful around how you provide your support to your small business owners in terms of job quality. And this is Pacific Community Ventures, a CDFI that supports small business owners and their communities in the fight for economic, racial, and gender justice. And they work side by side with growing small business leaders and solopreneurs through their integrated model, which is combining impact first, restorative capital, and pro bono business advising with their Good Jobs Innovation Lab that propels thriving communities with equitable jobs. And so you all should have a link to this toolkit in the chat box. But we have something even better for you. I am honored to introduce to you their Chief Impact Officer, Casey Bell, who will share this first of a kind Good Jobs, Good Business Toolkit. Thank you, Casey, for being with us today.
Well, thank you very much, Ebony, for that kind introduction. Before I get started, just sharing a quick apology from our CEO, who is across the street today, meeting with some of our small business owners and hosting an event with our staff. So she wishes that she could be here, but I'm really excited to be here to talk a little bit about our work and our Good Jobs, Good Business Toolkit. Ebony, would you mind transitioning us into our first slide? Yes, so as Ebony mentioned, my name is Casey Bell. I am the Chief Impact Officer at Pacific Community Ventures. We are a CDFI, an impact investor that's been around for 25 years. But we are in the midst of launching our fresh take and new restorative capital strategy that's intentionally recentering everything that we do within the lens of the civil rights movement and racial economic equity. We are deliberately ensuring that our lending products and business advising services are poised for high impact among BIPOC small businesses and micro businesses. And our ultimate objective in this strategy is to use our place-based approach to create multi-generational wealth in underestimated and excluded communities by supporting good job creation. In my role as CIO, I'm at the helm of our Good Jobs Innovation Lab. And at the lab, we leverage data analytics and behavioral economics to inform behavioral nudges in product development, as well as stakeholder communication that help us to help our solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and their workers. And we want them to all be employed in a way that enhances their health, their well-being, and their standing within the community. Good jobs with dignity. We're the first CDFI in the country working with businesses at this scale in this particular body of work, and our work is grounded in the belief that the 48% of workers owning and employed by small businesses in this country really should be employed in a way that helps them to build wealth and helps keep wealth within their communities. Essential workers, as we would say during the pandemic. So let's look at the next slide. So as I transition toward talking about our Good Jobs model and Good Jobs Toolkit, I'm going to start with a story. And this is about someone who our work is really for. This is Lila. And I'd like you to meet her. I can personally attest to the quality of Lila's product because we took the team this week to meet with her and her staff. And we had some taste testing that went on. So Lila's Cupcake and Bakery. If you're ever in Berkeley or Oakland, the surrounding area, I really suggest that you take a trip. Her story begins, like many entrepreneurs, in her home, in her kitchen. She found PCV after being turned down for a loan from a bank that she was a client of for 10 years. She then had a high interest fintech loan that she paid back, in her words, with everything that she had, but was eventually referred to us by one of our business advisors. I'll talk about her just a little bit more, and about how we took a solopreneur and helped her grow her business and build wealth within her community. But first, I want to dig a little bit deeper into our theory of change and our approach. So next slide. I'm an economist by training, and I joined PCV after years supporting climate finance, just energy transition, and workforce development. I'm a huge proponent of workforce development. There are many essential industries within our country that are going to need a skilled workforce in the coming years. But one of the things that I recognized in my work, particularly in the clean energy space, is that our emphasis on workforce development and positioning people for opportunities to build wealth really needs to be centered in helping to ensure that there are good jobs for folks to go to. We really need to be deliberate in ensuring that essential industries are providing good jobs. So I grew up in a family that experienced periods of economic and food security. This really caused the work to be very personal to me. I would say that I also had some privilege that really I was blind to, that allowed me to access opportunities that many in our portfolio have been systematically excluded from when it came to building wealth. So our new strategy really stems from what we're seeing in early economic recovery in the pandemic. We're at a critical moment in this recovery where we want to ensure that entrepreneurs of color, wage workers of colors, nobody's going to be left behind, and that we're bringing everybody into the wealth building recovery and paying in good paying wealth building jobs. And by listening first in our Good Jobs Innovation Lab, we are building relationships with leaders and centering power locally, innovating within our products to incentivize good jobs outcomes, and defining a research agenda that advocates for system changes. Because 48% of Americans that go to work every day, either as business owners or workers within small business, really do deserve a fair shake. An example of a good jobs innovation is that we are the first CDFI in the country to blend lending capital with micro grants, what we call our good jobs rebates. For every time an entrepreneur within our portfolio moves ahead on one of our job quality measures for themselves and their workers. Next slide. Culturally competent business advising is a critical pillar of our good job strategy, and we recognize that with a mentor who understands the community's needs and has industry-specific experience, we'll be able to help small businesses be 2 times more likely to succeed. Next slide. And here is our Good Jobs, Good Business, Good Business Toolkit, which contains the resources that build job quality across these 8 dimensions. Helping employers when the time is right is really important to us to explore the avenues that are going to improve the health and well-being of their workers. We talked a little bit in the previous conversation about employee compensation. Well, this is really a critical part of the conversation for us because workers deserve to have families with food in their bellies. We found that depending on the size of the business, the industry, and where the entrepreneur or solopreneur was in their journey, different pillars of good job creation would be more accessible and have spillover effects into the others. And we saw one of the areas where folks were making a lot of early headway is in scheduling and paid leave. We are in California where there are paid leave requirements, but I think it's the scheduling piece that's been, low cost to our workers and really, low cost to our clients and really accessible in the early journey for moving towards good job creation. This allows their workers to have dependable income and really kind of takes the stress out of a worker's day-to-day life when you know when you're going to be working, how to schedule your family around it, and that you're going to be able to pay your bills for the month because you know the hours that you're going to be able to have. So that's really sort of a critical area that we focused on early on. Hiring and professional development, jobs that are going to create dignity and growth, employee engagement, health benefits for health outcomes, and wealth building, all also critical parts of the strategy. During the pandemic, we really recognized that the businesses, the small businesses within our portfolio, many of them did not have access to HR resources. So we took some time to put together some materials on COVID-19 safety, as well as racial justice, to help employers have good conversations, provide safe work environments, and have critical conversations within their teams. Next slide. And these are some of the early results that we're seeing with the toolkit and the strategy. Median wage for full-time employees within our portfolio is $21. 52% of full-time workers are eligible for health benefits. 70% of full-time workers are eligible for retirement benefits. And I'll say, you know, in addition to the work that we're doing, California also starting to require the Cal Savers program for small businesses with 5 or more employees. And we're exploring sort of areas where we link that impact to seeing the outcomes that we want to see in wealth building and retirement savings among the communities that we serve. And again, early progress with that scheduling at least 2 weeks in advance that helps workers plan. Next slide. All right, and so the lab launch, we've been doing some early soft launch, but we'll officially launch the lab at the Clinton Global Initiative this fall. And our goal is to ensure that no CDFI has to reinvent the wheel when it comes to supporting their communities. We very much recognize that communities have different needs, which is why we take a listen first approach. But one of the great value adds that we know we'll be sharing with Network is our process for community engagement and product innovation that supports the individuals that we serve in a very specific and deliberate way. One of our next initiatives is going to be the Good Jobs Fellows Cohort, where we bring in the Good Jobs rebate recipients to provide feedback and co-create our research agenda so that we continue to innovate in ways that best serve the community. Next slide. Which all brings me back to Lila, whom we're working with. She is a Good Jobs rebate recipient, and we're engaging her to be a part of our Fellows Cohort. So here's what an entrepreneur growing her business out of her house and struggling to be a part with the traditional lending system was able to accomplish with our support. We were able to give her a $200,000 low rate restorative impact loan. She received free pre and post engagement business coaching. And with the support, she has opened 3 new stores. She's also looking to continue expansion. And I believe she's got a store sited in Atlanta. Revenues grew 99%. And Lila created 54 good quality jobs in her community where her employees are earning living wage, are being developed, are building wealth, and are working in a fair, engaged, and, you know, since I was there yesterday, also very fun workplace. All right, next slide. So finally, I'll just wrap with a few early thoughts on our learning agenda for the Good Jobs Innovation Lab. We're very, very excited about this. We are building out fresh equity measures into our business underwriting, exploring client journeys, and key behavioral nudge points for supporting the Good Jobs agenda. We're very interested in specifically drilling down demographically and by industry to help support solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and micro businesses in the way that they create a good job for themselves as well as for others. Digging into solopreneurship is very, very important to us. That journey is also is often we understand it to be a lonely one. Our CEO Balbal Gupta was a solopreneur, And we also recognize that the outcomes that we've measured for workers may need to be explored in more depth so that they're more self-defined by the solopreneurs and the entrepreneurs. And the solopreneurs and entrepreneurs that we work with really understand and are able to be recognized for their value. And yes, so looking at industry specific approaches as well, we recognize that there are some industries in our portfolio that are going to be high employment industries where there may be a need for more full-time workers versus part-time, and figuring out which rungs of the good jobs ladder we want to help folks receive support in earlier in a more fair and equitable small business working ecosystem is something that we're going to be exploring in a little bit more depth. So there, I believe I will pause, and I believe that Ebony, you might have a few questions for me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that overview of the toolkit. So yeah, we will be taking questions from the audience. So guys, if you have any questions, please send them over to us so we can get them to Casey. But in the meantime, I do have one follow-up question for you, which is knowing that, you know, a lot of small business owners are limited on what they can do because of resources, time, etc. What have you seen as far as if there's certain areas within those different measures that people prioritize and how they kind of try to go through this process and try to look at the different areas of how they can increase the quality of support that they're providing to their employees?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important question because, you know, entrepreneurship is a journey with a lot of pressures where, you know, being able to grow the business and create a sustainable and resilient business is really a high priority. You know, we are very deliberate and conscious in our efforts to talk about good jobs in a way that doesn't it doesn't feel like that all entrepreneurs are being, you know, kind of recommended that they need to start hiring a full workforce right away and investing in payroll systems and benefits and all of the pieces that, you know, are nice to have in a business that's reached a certain stage of growth. But again, we're focusing on small and micro businesses. So one of the areas that we're seeing high impact, even at the lowest cost, again, is that scheduling. You know, for workers to really understand when they're going to have hours, the hours that are going to be available to them, and to be able to make plans with their family to ensure that there are bills that are paid and food on the table. So that's a really critical piece. Another area that I think is low cost but high impact is building out that environment that is engaging. And that really supports the development of workers. But I need to take a step back too and say that good jobs really just aren't, I mean, they are very much about the workers. But, you know, people get into small business to be able to have a good job. So it is equally important to us that the entrepreneurs and solopreneurs in our portfolio feel supported in supporting themselves in a living wage and understanding where there's opportunities to drive efficiencies and drive different pieces of their business that are going to be able to help them have more predictability and stability and support in able to be able to thrive and be resilient. And so that's an area where we're starting to cover in the Good Jobs Toolkit and where we're looking to continue to grow.
Well, I love that you mentioned that because you're right. The small business owners, they're typically, especially Black and brown entrepreneurs and business owners, they're into it because it's a passion of theirs, right? And so they want to enjoy it. They want to have fun with it. They don't want to be stressed out about it. And there is always a lot of pressure anyways going into your own business. And so how can you think about the impact or the struggles or even the journey that they're going through in trying to provide job quality to their employees. So I love the fact that you're bringing in the perspective of how does this also impact the small business owners as well, because they already have a lot that they're juggling, if you will.
Yeah. I'll just add that our team is currently working on a white paper of sorts that comes out of some qualitative research that we added on to our annual impact report to really listen to the voices of the community. And we have been really working to provide some rigor in the way that we listen. And I would say one of the most common themes that we are hearing as we read the transcripts and reread the transcripts and digest what we're hearing from the small business owners is that they really got into small business to find freedom and to find financial freedom. And, you know, the sort of individualistic environment that we typically operate in has placed a lot of pressure on these businesses. And shifting within the COVID-19 environment, you know, because we were all very physically isolated, I think also was very mentally taxing and isolated as well. So good jobs, again, for small businesses. For us, it is about we've got restorative capital, we've got business advising support. We also have an implicit research question in addition to our explicit research on what is it going to take for the small business environment to be a place where everyone can thrive, where everyone has a fair shake, and that can be more resilient and can lead to better health incomes, better mental health incomes, and wealth building opportunities again in these communities.
Awesome. That's actually a good transition into a question that we have. So the question is, so how can entrepreneurs, CDFIs, and funding stakeholders track impact around building quality jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so you saw sort of like the 8 areas that we're building out the toolkit around. Our research agenda is really driven sort of by like 5 core pillars of job creation. And this includes wealth building opportunity, retirement, access to retirement benefits for wealth building opportunities, a fair living wage, an engaging workplace, scheduling and paid leave, and basic health benefits. So one of the ways that we track this is that we've really made it a part of our annual impact report, and we're using these metrics to really evaluate the power of everything that we do. And that's sort of the foundation that we're using to really build out our understanding of, where entrepreneurs may be in their journey and when best to lend support and leverage behavioral economics to ensure that they have access and the nudges to move in the direction that they need to create a business that's poised to thrive and engaged.
Got it. Thank you for that. So the next question is, were most of the companies in your portfolio already offering healthcare and retirement benefits? Since most small companies do not offer these type of benefits, how is it cost effective for them to start offering these benefits?
That's a great question. Yes, and I think this is a circumstance where we get into understanding where capital has some benefits. I think our good jobs rebates have played an important role in helping entrepreneurs opt into having more access to affording different measures as they go along their good jobs journey. I think this is an area where the policy environment plays a critical role. And these are conversations that we are having at the policy level. And that, California is a state where the Cal Savers program is free and available for businesses to opt into. So that's something that we are working to support our businesses with 5 or more workers in. We're also helping them to evaluate, ways in which, just because I think all of us on this call might know, well, I don't want to assume, but many of this call know that just having a retirement account doesn't mean that you're doing the best that you can with your retirement account to be able to build wealth. So finding ways to really drive toward those outcomes of wealth building is something that we're very interested in looking at a little bit more. But yeah, I think the bottom line is it's not always affordable and accessible, and where you live, may really very much dictate how available and accessible it is. I would say that, in the long term, if you can operate in a way that looks toward the long term, that it pays off in terms of having a stable workforce that's dedicated and co-creating your organization. But yeah, this is an area where the policy environment, it's really important for policymakers to be looking into ways that they could support, these critical essential services.
Definitely, I couldn't agree anymore. So regarding retirement, how are you seeing companies offering saving plans, or are the companies contributing to retirement plans?
So for the Cal Savers program in particular, there is no option for employee matching. I would that's a program where workers are automatically opted in, again, as a matter of it's something that businesses are required to do. So I would say that we would expect to see more of that through our portfolio because it is free and available to workers. Our business advising service does pair entrepreneurs who are looking into growing the business and at a point where they need to think about investing in these types of resources. It provides them with support in evaluating the options that are going to work best for their business. And this summer, we are actually doing expert cohorts across various areas of expertise that are going to help us better position ourselves to be able to competently work with our clients to support them in the journey.
Got you. So, as I mentioned earlier, Prosperity Now, we have a unique position where we're really trying to support small business and entrepreneurs of color by way of the support that we give to Black and Brown CDFI-led leaders. And so I'm curious, what is a recommendation, or how would you, or how should CDFIs who are interested in trying to use your model to scale your model, what would that look like for a CDFI?
Yeah, so I think first being very deliberate in building out your data ecosystem is really, really important. We are getting better and better every day at tracking our impact to ensure that it's not only sort of like high level impactful, but deeply impactful within Black and Brown communities, and and that core mission that we're centered in right now. And I would say that for us, it's really disaggregating reporting to be able to really understand which behavioral interventions, which product interventions are supporting the communities that we want to see more progress in. And I think from the funder perspective, really allowing that innovation to occur, because I think sometimes it might get sacrificed when it comes to measuring impact, because it takes time to really kind of grow and innovate in this space. And you have to be really courageous in the way that you report where you are and are not having success. So I would say that transparency, communication, continuing building this field of knowledge, and being very conscious in our reporting and our efforts are going to be critical to being more successful in this space.
Yeah, and I have a quick follow-up question. I know we have to close out in a few minutes, but in regards to funding, like what did that look like for you guys to be able to actually have the funding to invest into actually strategically building this out? Because one of the things that we're always trying to do is to advocate for more, I would say, trusted, unrestricted funding for our CDFIs to be able to invest in their infrastructure, invest in these processes, invest in better, robust evaluation, invest in their technical assistance that's not limited by loans.
Yeah, and I would say so a couple of different things. I think CDFIs are facing increased pressure and we want to demonstrate high impact and quality outcomes in the important work that we're doing, both in the racial equity space, and I would say as well as the climate space. As technology is changing and we work to keep pace, finding a place where we can do data-driven analytics or adopt PCAF for those of you with a climate lens on the call. That requires support, that requires staff time, that isn't necessarily project-based staff time. We need to be, it is so critical that we be accountable for the impact in the community that we exist to provide. That is absolutely critical. I think that it's finding a balance so that, CDFIs have an opportunity to be human, to innovate, to grow their infrastructure internally, and to be poised for high impact.
Love it. We have one last question before we transition to our next piece. So the last question is, how does student loan debt impact small business owners and staff, if you see it in your work?
Yeah, so this is something that I cannot necessarily speak to specifically. It's an area that we're starting to dig into, but I would say generally, and this is just kind of stepping back into my career as an economist. It impedes small business starts. It impedes the ability. So my son attends a daycare that was created by a small business owner. It really impacts our ability to access quality, affordable, essential services, because small business owners are operating on a margin and taking a risk to be able to grow that business. We're a society that thrives on risk and innovation. So we need to find a way to ensure that equitably, entrepreneurs have access to these risk-taking opportunities, and be incentivized to perform, but also know from a health and well-being perspective that they're not going to be wiped out. At the end of the day, this is about creating opportunities for businesses to grow and thrive and grow our economy. It is about achieving gender and racial equity. It's also about food on tables, less reliance on blood pressure medication, and strong, healthy, environmentally friendly outcomes for all of our communities equitably.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Casey, for spending some time with us and showing us your toolkit. It was very informative, so thank you for that. So we are going to transition to our fireside chat, where we really go deep into what is the role that CDFIs can play in supporting small businesses. And so I am going to ask Casey to transition out, and I'm going to ask Inez Long, who is the CEO of the Black Business Investment Fund, who is a CDFI, who is also one of our partners in this project, to come on with one of her small business owners, Veronica Anderson, and I will transition over to them.
Hey. All right, great.
All right, thank you. There you go. I'm off now.
Well, hello, Ms. Anderson. You got to unmute it.
There. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So let me take a moment and introduce you to the audience. Ms. Veronica Anderson, she's president and CEO of Anderson and Associate PA, and she has over 30 years experience in business, corporate, nonprofit, real estate, and estate planning law, as well as community engagement and MWBE compliance program management. Ms. Anderson has been the senior attorney for Anderson and Associates for 19 years. In addition to that, she worked under 3 Florida governors as the executive administrator of the state of Florida's Commission on Economic Development and Minority Business Advocacy and Assistance. Also, Ms. Anderson has been recognized by the Orlando Business Journal for Business Owner of the Year. And at the Women Who Mean Business annual ceremony in 2011, she's also been recognized by the mayor and the city of Orlando as a woman business owner who is succeeding against all odds. So welcome, Ms. Anderson. It's such a pleasure to have you here this afternoon to speak with you.
Well, thank you for that very nice introduction.
Absolutely. So we're going to speak a little bit about job quality this afternoon. And my first question to you that I'd like to start in our conversation is, what does job quality mean to you?
Job quality, that's a very interesting question, but I think it means a job that provides a living wage, that respects work, life balances, that provides a safe space for mutually beneficial relationships while providing outstanding services or products for the community. That would be a quality job.
Awesome. I would agree with you wholeheartedly. That is a quality job. You know, we're coming through this pandemic, and so many minority businesses have been impacted so gravely economically in this COVID pandemic. Can you speak to us this afternoon about investments that you were able to take advantage of to keep your staff in place?
Okay, so going back to 2020, it was devastating. Government pretty much shut down, you know, the economy, and everybody, you know, went home. Some businesses, you know, stopped doing business completely because they were in the restaurant service or something like that. Well, my business is legal services. So we were declared an essential service. We could continue to go into the office and operate our business. And so that's what we did. Now, we were impacted by COVID. I mean, some of my employees had to take, you know, 10, 14 days off because, you know, they were impacted by COVID, or, you know, if they had children, their children, or something like that, or a family member, they had exposure to COVID. So, you know, we would recognize all of the requirements of our government to make sure that they stayed home quarantined for the requisite period of time. And, you know, and then we have protests going on during that year, where you had the George Floyd incident or murder, and a lot was going on. So I felt like a depression came over, you know, the business economy. Like you said, businesses shut down. Now I received help, and that's what allowed me to stay afloat. I received help from the Black Business Investment Fund, which, as you know, Inez, is a CDFI that you run. And so thank you so much for that kind of support. I received the PPP loans for keeping my staff on board. I did not lay off one employee at the time. There were about 5 of us. I did not lay off anyone. And so that type of assistance helped me. There was money that they gave to businesses, like $1,000 per employee for something like an emergency. I was able to utilize all of those resources just to hold on, because of course some of my clients struggled through COVID. Some of my clients could not pay me. So when that happened, those insertion or investment of capital helped my company stay afloat. I received grants, which was like so very useful. Again, the BBIF, I guess you received a grant from Truist, yes. I believe it was, yes. Like $1 million that you invested in a number of businesses, Black-owned businesses. Yes. And so I was one of those businesses. And I received a grant from the African American Chamber of Commerce, Facebook, small business grants. So all of these grants began to come in, as well as the forgivable loan through the federal government. So I used it just to keep my business intact. In addition to that, through BBIF, I was able to get some resiliency training. Just to, I had people calling, checking in on me, technical assistance advisors, asking, how are you doing? What do you need? How can we help you? And just knowing that I had that type of support just energized me. I mean, I was not going to fail when all of these entities and individuals were investing in me. And so for that reason, we just kind of put our heads down. We went through it, and we came out on the other side doing not only fine, but actually better than fine.
That is just awesome. And that is because of your leadership. You aggressively went into the world and you looked and you seeked out those opportunities of investment that could help carry you through that really tough economic time. And you're commended for that. And I would like for you to speak a little bit about the creative ways in which you have utilized resources to support onboarding and training of your staff. I'd like for you to share with the audience how you have increased your staff since that time.
Yes. And so the grants helped, as well as, even though we were struggling with employees coming in and out with COVID, we were able to work remotely. Some of the grants and the forgivable loan, which ultimately was forgiven, I used to get technology, more computers, updated computers. I utilized updated telephone systems so that we could communicate better. Some of the creative ways that we utilize for employees for onboarding would include looking towards the government as well as the private sector to match funds in order to train employees. So we have added, since COVID, 5 additional employees,
Oh, awesome.
which is like double what we had starting out. And we were able to get a grant from what we call Career Source, which is an element of the state of Florida, Employ Florida. We were able to get on-the-job training grants in order to bring on legal interns so that we could train them. And what they do is they pay or reimburse 50 to 75% of the wages for a period of weeks. And for me, I believe it's 11 weeks for students who are in law school who needed to be trained in order to come and work in our firm. And so onboarding, as you know, is the most expensive part. You train an employee, you hope and pray that after you're done with the training, they're going to stay so that you can get a return on your investment. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So you've invested all of this money. You don't have the employee, you got to start all over again. So by partnering with the state through those type on-the-job training grants, I am able to, kind of not have the top burden, the heavy burden of paying all of that up front while I'm doing the training. And so once the training is complete, now you got a trained employee who can now go and start helping you make money. So those are some of the things that I did in order to onboard and train workers.
That is just absolutely very good. That's very good, very strategic on your part. Now, I want to speak a little bit about how you have been able to support your staff in their navigation of access to social services like healthcare or paid leave.
Well, so I have a financial advisor that I pay like a small fee in order to provide advice to me and my staff. She is an African-American female business owner. She is very sensitive to the needs of small businesses. So she has come in to show us ways that we can get healthcare at an affordable rate. So I'm able to pay 50% of my employees' healthcare costs in terms of insurance. She has also helped us develop a retirement plan, and we were able to do that during the COVID era, growing the companies, everybody pulling together, working so hard. I figured a reward could be that I could match whatever they put into a retirement plan. So I've been able to match up to 3%, for the first time. And that, I consider that a benefit. My employees can work remotely from home when they're sick. That's because we invested in the technology so that they can do so. If they feel well enough to engage in, a meeting with the office, it's so easy to do that through the technology. We allow children to come to work when the mother or the parent is in a jam. And so, of course, this isn't something that we allow every day, but if the mother or the parent who, has the child is in a jam, they can bring their child or their grandchild to work. And, we are supportive of families, and we feel like that makes for a healthy work environment. We allowed our employees to make up hours if they lost it, if they were hourly employees rather than salaried. If they were hourly employees and they didn't have any more sick leave hours or vacation leave, we allowed them to make up the time so that they didn't lose income just because they were dealing, with an illness or something like COVID. We do staff lunches that I, pay for just to make sure that, you're not hungry while we're trying to go over all of these files. We celebrate whenever we meet our monthly financial goals. We go out to dinner and have a good time getting to know each other. We also give gifts for successful marketing strategies or successful ideas that my employees come up with. And also, because, salaried people can take time off usually better than an hourly employee. We reward our hourly employees with a paid day off when we reach our goals on a quarterly basis. So we're always looking for ways of being supportive to our staff, because we know that we can't compete with large corporations or governments in terms of what they give their employees. But I feel like if you're helping my company make money, then if I'm going to give to you as well, so that we're all, working in a healthy work environment and you have good morale, and therefore you're happy to help me make money as well. So those are some of the things we do to provide for a supportive environment.
Man, that's just awesome. I would declare Anderson and Associates as one of the wonderful places to work.
Thank you, Inez. Thank you so much. That's so nice.
Awesome. And as a leader of a CDFI, we were able to help businesses like yours, like you shared a little bit earlier, through $1 million grant from Truist Bank. Truist allowed for us to use those grant dollars to pass through to our businesses. And we were able to take those dollars, as you know, leverage it with additional capital and invest it in the companies to help them create some form of resiliency to make it through that economic storm. And for funders that are out there that might be watching this, I would say please consider providing grant dollars, pass-through grant dollars to CDFIs,
Yes.
so that we can pass through those dollars to our business clients and help them overcome so many of the challenges that they have. Because as you can see from Ms. Anderson here, man, there's just so much positive that comes out of that. Ms. Anderson, how many new jobs did you say you have brought on here lately?
5 new jobs.
I mean, just look at this, 5 new jobs this close to the pandemic. This is just outstanding. And so the community grows stronger when small businesses like yours grow stronger and employ more people and provide those people with quality jobs, which you are
Absolutely.
doing. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for spending the time to talk with me this afternoon and to share all of those great strategic ideas and pathways that you've engaged in with the audience.
Thank you so much, Inez. I just want to say that I feel extremely blessed to have met you and your team members. A CDFI is mission driven. They are very, very different from traditional banks. And I tell you, without the BBIF and CDFIs, there would be no place for small businesses to go to. There was a unique understanding of that we needed investments. There was an equity investments, not just all loans. And because of that, we felt encouraged. We felt that we had the backing of a strong CDFI and we can continue to grow. We felt like you guys were not going to let us fail. And I serve on a roundtable with about 15 other small businesses like myself who receive the grants. And we help each other tremendously with the advice. We utilize the software of Prosperity Now, Growth Wheel, and all of those tools coming together, as well as the staff people checking in on us, really was helpful. And it made a difference. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for that type of support.
You're absolutely welcome. Veronica, we have a question that's come in, and I'm going to read it. It says, Veronica, your business is so impressive in your ability to provide quality jobs to your staff. What is one way you hope to improve your job quality offerings?
Well, I would like to do a number of things. I would like to increase the percentage of health insurance match that I currently do. I do 50%. I would like to do greater than that. I would like to do somewhere between 60 and 70% because healthcare is so important and is very expensive. I would like to know every year that I'm going to be able to match up to 3%, that 3%, instead of having that range of 1 to 3%. I would like to know that I can do that 3% every year because it just blesses my heart to know that I'm strong enough to give, to my employees. I would just love to be able to increase the wages. We have some decent wages, but it could always be better. It just makes me feel great when I see my employees grow. I mean, I've seen them get vehicles. I've seen them purchase homes. I've seen them get new apartments when they were, living with family. And it blesses my heart. I feel like I'm a part of this great social experiment. And I can see how it really, really works. So the more I get, the more I can give. And so those are some of the things I would like to do. I like to improve the lives of my employees and really, really, because happy employees really help the community.
Yes.
Happy employees make sure that your clients are happy.
Yes.
And make sure your clients are well served. And so those are the things I like to do for them because I know it goes further. It just continues to expand.
Awesome answer. Awesome answer. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions. I don't see any other questions in the queue at this time. But I have really enjoyed talking with you.
There's one more question, Inez. So the question is to just to speak about earlier when you mentioned all the good opportunities and funding opportunities you were able to take advantage of during the pandemic. We also hear a lot around how small business owners do not know that resources exist, or they feel overwhelmed about the processes and being able to take advantage of them. From your opinion, for those who are not as who was not as successful as you were, what do you think is the disconnect or the missing piece for them?
You know, you really have to be connected to community, the business community, in order to get the information. So by my being involved with the CDFI, the Chamber, and some other organizations, the National Association of Minority Contractors, and other groups, I was flooded with the information about grants. I mean, there was one point where there were so many grants coming our way. It was just challenging to find the time to, respond, especially with the short turnarounds. So I would recommend longer turnaround time so that we can respond. And then, if you're not prepared, if you don't have an accountant or CPA, if you don't have your business paperwork in order, some of the requirements, you'll get left behind because you won't have it and you need to go get it. But if you use this opportunity to realize that you must have all of these documents that the grantors are requesting on hand in a folder, quickly accessible, then you can access those things and respond quickly, because they're all asking for the same, information. They want to know your annual sales. They may want to see your tax returns or some financial statements, your employer, records to see that you're, filing in your proper taxes, and just, some basic things like that. So I would just say it pays to align yourself with professionals who can help you run your business legally in a very sound manner.
And I also, that very good advice. I also see the question about how can CDFIs work with entrepreneurs to measure improvement in job quality. Veronica, you probably could even answer that just based upon how our CDFI worked with you.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, they required the grantees, the grantees to attend monthly meetings. And you had to attend so many meetings. I mean, you couldn't miss too many meetings. That was a measure. They required us to submit our financial statements on a monthly basis and upload it into a certain portal. And if you couldn't do that, you would send it to them and they would do that. So that's measuring your financial strength. And they're talking to us as we're telling them our challenges at these roundtable meetings. And so they're measuring what we're saying. They also had these training portals that we had to go into. They knew when we went into the training portals, how many times we went, what we were looking at when we went into the portals, because we gave them that kind of permission when we, took the funds. And so that's how they measured whether we were getting the training, whether we were attending the meetings, and whether we were financially growing, or if we were having some challenges that they needed to address. So that's my answer, Inez. Do you have anything to add to that?
Absolutely. So basically, what she's saying to the audience here is that as a CDFI, we were extremely active on our coaching side, our management technical assistance side, to ensure that the businesses that we were helping were in fact doing their due diligence to stay around. you know, because they are in receipt of these grant dollars, and you're investing those dollars because you want them to be successful. So our CDFI reached out to our database of clients and offered the opportunity for them to be assisted during this time. And so I would say that it's very important for CDFIs to reach out to their entrepreneurs to help them, but also help them in a way that allows for it to be real, allow for the business owner to really invest their time into their success. And that is what our CDFI did. And I would encourage other CDFIs to consider doing similar type things.
Yes.
Ebony, do we have any other questions, or do we wrap it on up?
Yes, no more questions. I'm so happy we ended it with you two power ladies. Like, you guys are some powerhouse Black ladies doing y'all thing. That's all I'm gonna say. All I got.
Thank you.
Hands down. Thank you both. Thank you, Inez. Thank you, Veronica, for just sharing your experiences, your truth, your wisdom with us, your lessons learned, all of it. I was in the back like, yep, love it, love it. So thank you for all of it. I appreciate you both for being with us today. So I'm going to transition us into our recap. I'm gonna try to recap today. It was a lot going on. But I'm gonna recap, do some next steps, and a call to action. So you ladies can transition out, and I will try to close out the shop.
All right. Well, thank you, Ebony, for inviting us to be a part of this. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Woo! So we had a lot of nuggets, a lot of things that I heard today that I hope you all found that was worth your time and very informational, and hopefully really gave you some ideas of how you can use the role that you respectively have in this sector to be able to support job quality, whether that's if you're a CDFI, a small business owner, a advocacy actor, just a stakeholder in the space. I really feel like there's a lot of things, even as me as a technical assistance provider, I heard things that I can do. So I really hope that you all got something from it. But, you know, just to recap on just a few, I'll say things that kind of rose to the top for me that I'll speak to just real quickly is that we know that the pandemic has really impacted how employers and employees define job quality. And it really created a space for employers to show how they trusted their employees to get the work done. And employees really start rethinking, like, what does flexibility mean to me in this space? Like, how can I balance life in my family? We talk about work-life balance, we all do, but I think that we started thinking about it and really looking and feeling it in a different way over the past few years. And I also appreciated how we talked about how other ways to think about job quality beyond the financial, the main thing that people think about. While definitely income, quality of income is an important factor, but there's other things. There's the company values. There's more touch points that you can have with your employees so that they can provide input and feedback so that they really feel valued as your employee. There's professional development and just more flexible schedules. There's a lot of different ways that I felt like both Veronica and Jose just lifted up just different ways in which you can really create a healthy working environment. It's one of the things I heard. I also heard, you know, we don't talk a lot about this in my space, but I know it's definitely something that I would definitely want to get a little bit more deep in, but just the whole pathways, the workforce pathways for reentry individuals, and understanding that a lot of time, not only do they find entrepreneurship as the only way for them to be able to have a living because of some of the stereotypes and policy implications that's out here that make it challenging for them to re-entry into society, but also thinking about it from the perspective as someone, a re-entry individual trying to get a job, and how small business owners are usually more open to giving them a second chance and investing in them and giving them the professional development that they need, because maybe they even have some shared struggles. And so, you know, it was also interesting to hear from Marie, who she spoke a lot about the SBA tools and programs that members can really take advantage of. But she also was quickly to note that businesses of color are more hesitant to use these resources. And so there's definitely some opportunity for us to see why that's happening, and to see how we can be a bridge to them understanding and knowing what all SBA has to offer, and really being able to be that connector, if you will, not only for CDFIs, but also I'll say entrepreneur serving organizations as well. I do a lot of work with nonprofits that provide services and technical assistance to small business owners. And so, you know, there's definitely some space there for us to really see how those of us in the ecosystem can help bridge the gaps between what resources are out here that are not being taken advantage of by our Black and brown business owners. And I really loved Jose, and how, you know, he was really candid about what, you know, yes, I want to give quality jobs. Yes, what business owner don't? But there's also some challenges, you know, and he spoke to those challenges around how to really find those balance, and in particularly how to find healthcare, health benefits. And, you know, sometimes it's not even the fact that he doesn't want to, but it's so many criterias and things that's against him when you have a smaller staff, understanding that they're going to lead to a high cost of deductibles. Your staff might not even take advantage of it because of that. And a lot of times you won't even meet the requirements of the health providers because they don't see it as something that's beneficial to them, because it's not big on the numbers. And so I think there's a lot of space for us in the policy space to really think about how can we create more opportunities for small business owners to be able to take advantage of things like that? And how can we also make health providers and others more accountable to our business owners that are not large corporations? So there is definitely a lot of opportunities there. And, you know, one of the things that I also heard throughout all of our conversations, from the panel discussion to the Fireside Chat to my conversation with Casey Bell, is that CDFIs, when it comes down to it, you're so much more than a capital provider. You are a connector of many things. Yes, you do provide capital, but you provide technical assistance, you provide resources, you provide information. And so I think you don't really get the full platform that you should, if you will. And we also know that you are the financial institution that are most likely that's going to actually provide support to Black and brown business owners and individuals. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the work that you do. And lastly, I'm just going to say, in regards to what I heard, you know, small business owners, you guys are positioned to offer a healthy working environment in ways that larger corporations struggle to do, and some of them actually just don't value to do. So with that, you definitely have some benefits and some things, some leverage that you have with individuals from the community who are passionate about the work that you do as well. Quickly, we do have resources, and so all attendees should see a handout pane on your screen where you can access all the resources. And just a recap, the resources was the Good Jobs Toolkit. There's also our Investing in Job Quality full report and the executive summary report. So please take advantage of those things. Please share with your network. And of course, if you have any questions around the research that Prosperity Now did, feel free to reach out to us, and we will definitely be there to support you. Lastly, we do have a call to action, because we are all about action at Prosperity Now. So with that, I want to thank my policy team, who has created a letter for you guys to sign. So what you should be finding in the chat box is a letter where you can really look at some of the things that we have written up to write a letter to a CDFI coalition. And so we do know that you guys are uniquely positioned to support small business and entrepreneurs of colors. And besides being a critical source of capital to these businesses, you guys provide and you partner with others in the ecosystem to provide education, training, and technical assistance. And given the importance of job quality and BIPOC-owned small businesses in their local communities, we recommend that CDFIs provide resources on local and federal benefits to entrepreneurs and place a greater emphasis on supporting job quality of small businesses. So if you please could look at the link, take a look at that letter where we really go deep into what that looks like and really trying to motivate the CDFI coalition to push for some more policy and advocacy efforts to really support this space. So thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank all of our speakers. I want to thank Gary, our president and CEO, for joining us today. I also want to thank Bill and Melinda Gates for funding this project. And I want to thank all of you, our audience members, who have provided great questions today and who have been with us since 1 o'clock today. I appreciate you truly taking out the time of your day to be with us. And again, job quality is important. You define what it means. Thank you and have a great day.